My background is a whitewater kayaker, slalom and whitewater. I represented Australia and in World Cups, World Championships overseas. So I'm on the river, or I used to be on the river pretty well 6 days a week. Now I'm on the river only when it's in flood. I'm sort of like a big water paddler now. So I've know the river around Warrandyte, Toowoomba Park like the back of my hand. So I just wanted to give a different perspective on the river that people probably don't think about when they look at something angelic like this. Since, I guess, COVID times, we've had quite a lot of wet weather. And because of that, we've had a lot of trees falling down, which has created a lot of snags and probably blocked a lot of the direct waterways for people who are using the river recreationally. Also, what we don't see under the water is a lot of rubbish that has been dumped there over the years. So when white settlers came in here all those years ago, and the mining, Warrandyte looked a whole lot different. A lot of the trees, vegetation were wiped away for using for industry, and the riverbanks were quite bare. So a lot of people were able to throw a lot of building products, for example, bottles, fencing, corrugated iron, there's cars, bits of cars. I've pulled out 2 motorbikes, my brother's pulled out a pistol, a safe. You'd be amazed with what's under there. So when the river does flood, it brings down all these trees. We have what's called a sieve, when water can pass through the branches of the trees, but when we get caught up in them, we can, it causes us some problems. So we've got sieves, we've got trees like this that are all the way across the river, and they're essentially pretty big hazards to people who aren't used to paddling on a river or floating down on a river or swimming. So this is one of the issues that I see for river safety in and around Warrandyte at the moment. Since relaxation of COVID, Warrandyte's pretty well been found. Any beautiful day we see down here, you can't get a car park. The same thing has happened on the river. We've had, from what I've seen, a big burst in people using the water recreationally. When I get on the water, even though I've got a whole lot of experience, I've always got a life jacket and a helmet. Anyone that I know who paddles recreationally does the same thing. We can swim, we know the river, but unfortunately, we've got to a stage where we've got a lot of people who are getting inflatable toys made for pools. They come down onto the river and they get stuck up on snags like this. The inflatable toys get ripped. Here's a pipe that's just behind the bakery in Warrandyte that's only in the last couple of years. I'm not sure where it's come from, whether it's been eroded from the bank or someone's rolled it up. But, you put your foot in there and you're in a bit of trouble. River hydraulics. This is what I'd like to... This looks like an angelic sort of bit of river. I like to talk about water that's stable or predictable, just to dumb it down, and unpredictable. Predictable water is something where if you go into a body of water like a swimming pool or a dam, you can swim in it. Predictable water is usually something like in an eddy line like this where it's not moving. Where people are getting into trouble swimming is when they come down here, and when this predictable water meets the unpredictable water, we're getting like a boil and whirlpools and that sort of stuff. And if you're not an experienced swimmer, those conditions, even though they don't look terrible there, have the opportunity to drag you around, turn you sideways, flip around. There's a whirlpool and all that sort of stuff there. You can see the sort of predictable water here, the unpredictable water there, predictable water up there. A lot of people are swimming in the river without personal flotation devices, and thinking that that's not much of an issue, but yeah, it can have dire consequences if you're not experienced. Here are some people having fun in the tunnel. These guys, this was taken a long time ago. The river's up really high here. You can see this is the end of the tunnel. Here's a couple of blokes floating down. No personal flotation device, no helmets, no shoes. Since, I'm not sure, last 10 years, every Australia Day I've seen flotillas of people coming down. They're usually uni students. They start at Everard Drive or Truno Avenue. They go around the tunnel, just like this. They've got an esky or two. Some of them have got big boom box. Once again, you'll have 60 of them in a pack. Sometimes I've counted. No personal devices, flotation, no helmets, drinking beer, having fun. It's really good. A trip around the tunnel can take 5 to 6 hours in one of these. And as the rangers can attest to, they frequently get people coming up there with sunstroke, sunburn, cut feet, saying that we don't know where we are, we're lost, can you help us out? So this is a bit of an issue that happens regularly in the summer. Here's someone in Warrandyte that got rescued. They were on a personal flotation device as well. 2 people on a doll each. It's unbelievable the risks that people are prepared to take, I think, in the river. And this was a few years ago. It wasn't the fault of these ladies. They were local ladies. Another tree that was across the river blocked their path. They couldn't get out in time, and they ended up in it. So I went around to some of the local water holes because I hadn't really looked closely at signage and that sort of stuff, but all the accessible water holes, accessible I mean by having car parks that people can easily access, all of them have got signs warning you of the dangers. And still you see people taking risks. So after that tragedy at Osborne Road, I was paddling down with my son. I had no idea what had happened earlier on in the day. And we were paddling down to my place, and I noticed just behind the pub there was a group of 15 people. They were new Australians. They were having a ball. They were all in the shallows, right beside this sign here. And there was 4 ladies up to their waists with a pool noodle, and one of them slipped off the edge of the bank. Well, it was the river bank, but it's dropped off sharply. She dragged the other one underneath with her, and they both disappeared. And just bang, gone. And because of the tannin in the water, you can't see where the person is. Luckily, they scrambled, they grabbed hold of the noodle, got themselves dragged back up, and they just had a few coughs and a laugh, and everyone laughed, and then they all kept swimming. So even though, I guess, people don't understand, this is actually where it happened, right here. There's a sign. They were just paddling around here. They disappeared underwater right in front of me. So I'm not sure what has to happen with signage or education or anything like that, but I see people take risks regularly on the river, even though that there's signs, and that looks like a nice place to swim. But it's so hard to tell sometimes. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about the river.
The biggest thing to be aware of is that risk that the river can pose, even when it looks safe. We've got a picture on the right, picture on the left. The one on the left, it's dramatic. It probably looks more dangerous to most. But as Kane's saying, that's a bit of water that you can read and navigate if you have the relevant level of experience. Picture on the right, that's a section of river called the Strid. Possibly one of the most deadly bits of river in Europe. And we'll get into why in a bit. I just want you to remember how calm that looks and how inviting and safe. One of the biggest, most visible hazards in the river are these trees, other obstacles that come down and what we refer to as strainers or sieves. The water can push you up against them and basically get you stuck. Once you're on them, you really can't. Even spending a lot of time in the river, it's hard to really get your head around how much force pushes you up against these things until you've experienced it. In my case, in a safe, controlled training environment, but I'm very glad I've never had to. I think one of the better ways I can think to demonstrate, that's 1 metre square. If the river's flowing 3.6 kilometres an hour, a ton of water moves through that every second. So if you can imagine all of that water is pushing you into one of these trees, I don't think there's any chance anyone's getting off that, no matter how experienced you are. Obviously, there's a lot of trees in the river. We all see that every day. But other features, rocks and man-made features like the pipe Kane showed you, all have a very similar effect. For our purposes, they'll cause you just the same amount of harm. Difference is that some of them, like rocks, aren't as easy to spot. There's not always going to be branches sticking out of the river that you can see and easily avoid. You've also got these undercuts, which is what makes that first river I showed you so dangerous. You can get sucked in under them, not find your way out. Only real example in Warrandyte I can think of is those cliffs just down from the bakery. There's some there, not too big, but it's something to note that there's always things going on that you can't necessarily see. Another feature, thankfully not too much of in Warrandyte, would be the low head down. Now these are things that scare me, and I'm sure some others in the room would back me up. You can look how calm that water looks above the weir there. This is Dites Falls, by the way. That was on a job where we were going to launch a little while upstream from the weir, where it was safe to do so, of course. A member of my unit, who wasn't at the time experienced in swift water, had looked at that river and said, yep, it looks safe, it looks calm. That's why we went down to show that. There's a few big hazards with these weirs. If we want to move on. One of the big ones is these holes, the hydraulics that Kane mentioned earlier. The way that the water will swoop in and it will backfill the space it made from moving so quickly, and it can spin you around, discombobulate you. It also creates this basically a vortex. It can suck you back into it if you're not careful. And it can look perfectly calm. From the top of that calm water, you've got this horizon line effect where you're looking from calm water to calm water below. You may not even see it. So I think this particularly comes into effect, obviously when you're paddling in the river, but also in floods where it's the environment's changed. And when you're crossing flooded rivers, you often I find people get into trouble with this effect that it looks safe. You think you can either cross directly across or move down the river, but you just don't see the hazards below you because of this effect. The water's hiding the worst hazards. And flood is the other thing that we do. Look, in this context, a lot of what you see, we assist the police with search and with rescue on the river. But one of our biggest responsibilities is floods. And all of these things that we discussed tonight about the hazards in the river, they go just as much, if not more, for flooding. So we usually have our nice contained river, just doing river things. In Warrandyte, of course, it's all full of wreckage, it's full of mine shafts, it's all sorts of things in there. But it's relatively clear of debris, of rubbish, all of that sort of thing. But of course, then you get a flood, even a relatively minor one, and it includes all of these trees, it includes animals, it includes industrial waste. Anything that's within that floodplain suddenly becomes a part of the river, and that becomes a hazard to you as well. So all of those strainers that you get in the river, now you've also got farm fences, for example, you've got road barriers, all sorts of additional hazards that even when you're familiar with an area, I can tell you from experience that a flood changes your perspective and your intimate knowledge of where everything is and hides those features. So that's sort of where we come back to those hidden features. The calm water on top doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a lot going on underneath. Here's a picture I took, I honestly don't remember where that was, it was definitely in Manningham though, of a lot of water moving through this drain under the, not a freeway, a road, that at the moment is visible. You can see what's happening there, but as I keep saying, it looks relatively calm, even though it's moving fairly quickly. If you add about another 60 centimetres of flood to that, that's going to become completely invisible, but still, that same amount, that ton of water is still moving through there every second, and that can suck you in. Which is why we really harp on the whole, don't drive through floodwater, don't play in floodwater, don't swim in it, it's just not worth it. If you're an experienced paddler and you know the river and you know the risks and you can read that, that's another issue. But the environment changes from what you know when it floods. I've seen roads collapse into sinkholes, I've seen manhole covers. They'll be lifted off by the first lot of rain as it pours through the drains, and then as the rest of the water starts to rise and the drains start doing their job again, they'll suck you right into it, even though you've walked that exact same road 1,000 times before. And you can see what collects. All of that rubbish, the pollution, it's not something you want to be in. It's, yeah, the things we see when we're out in the floodwater. You don't want that in and around your face.
I've been the sergeant at Warrandyte since 2012. What we all love about Warrandyte is the river, don't we? We all come here, we live here because it's such an idyllic place. If it's not the bush, it's the river. And you know, and you look at that, everyone loves it. The dogs love it. All the dogs go swimming, and it's just idyllic, isn't it? That photo was taken day 2 of our search in October last year after we'd lost someone. And yet, how idyllic is that? The sun's out, it's just smooth as, but that current's going. And it was so much so that our divers, police divers, wouldn't go into the water because it was moving that quickly. So we look at it and we go, yes, that's a lovely environment. We just, I guess, the purpose of tonight is to inform people. But people really need to give themselves the best chance. And the first one is, can you swim confidently? I was just found out tonight, actually talking to Manningham Council, that those signs that you see at the ends of all the car parks with Manningham saying, these are the dangers, be careful, they came about because of a fatality in 2007 where a special needs person was out with his carers, swam halfway across the river, got into trouble, tried to swim back and didn't make it, and the carers tried to dive in. Unfortunately, very sad, tragic situation. But nobody checked to see if he was competent in the river. Could he swim? Could he swim back? Who knows? I don't know. That was before my time. But I also know too that in the latest ones, that has been a factor. People can swim in a pool, because a pool, we can see the bottom and the conditions don't change. Can they swim confidently in the river? Is there someone with you that can help you if you get into trouble? And that's been another issue, is that people go into the river and unfortunately, and Lifesaving Victoria will give you the statistics on this, men are their own worst enemies in that they think that they're far more capable than they really are. And they go in and there's no one there keeping an eye out for them. So is there someone who at least can do something, call someone, jump in, do something? Are you in a fit state to swim? We're just seeing all those people boozing it up on the river. And that's not half the issues. Half the people getting in the river already tanked before they've got there. And this isn't aimed at just Warrandyte people, because we know we're getting an influx of a lot of people from all over Melbourne. You Google best swimming spots in Melbourne and Warrandyte comes up as number one, Pound Bend. And are you familiar with the current conditions? Now, you know, that seems like an obvious one, but most people who decide they're going to jump in a boat and come down from Wonga Park to get out here at the Pound and they'll meet the family down here have no idea how long it's actually going to take them to get it, and they think it's going to be a lovely 2-hour paddle, you know, and we'll film it as we go along and so forth. Invariably we get people, kayakers, or people in, not necessarily kayakers, people who find some sort of a flotation boat or whatever, come down the river and start getting dark, and they're not even within cooee of their destination, and they have no idea where they are. It's starting to get dark on the river. They decide to get out and have no idea where they are, and then we're searching for them in the dark with helicopters because they don't know where they are, we don't know where they are. And that's, again, the last two. Do you know what is under the surface? We covered that. And does anyone know where you are? And that is a big one, because if nobody knows where you are, no one's looking for you, and that is a big issue, especially if you get lost. And when we're doing our search back in October for our missing swimmer, we had another incident going on up at Wonga Park where people on a kayak had flipped out. A lady had gashed her knee pretty badly. They got to the side of the river to call 000 and ask for help. Nobody knew where they were. They could try and ping their phone roughly. Ambulance couldn't get in there because of where it was. In the end, we had to put the ambulance in the back of the police car and four-wheel drive in there with the SES. That was fine. We managed to find the lady and her partner and fix them all up. And then the SES had to put the canoe on the top of the car to get them out of there. So if you don't know where you are, you've already put yourself behind the 8 ball. So what I'm just saying with this is give yourself the best chances you have of survival. Be intelligent, learn stuff. And we're all very familiar in Warrandyte with the risks of bushfire, aren't we? We all go, we have our plan, we know what our triggers are for when we should leave, what we should stay. We've got the pump at the back to put the sprinklers on. We've got all of those things. We've got our go bag with all the phones, torches. Everyone is very familiar with what they're going to do in an emergency, in a fire situation. Are we applying the same level of planning when we go for a trip down to the river? You know, do we know where we're going? Do we know, have we told people to keep a lookout for us? Are people expecting us? Are we in a fit condition? Now, I'm tipping that if you've got to strap Coke bottles to yourself, he's not very confident at this stage, unless he's expecting to swim into a rip or something. People jumping into the water, not knowing what's underneath the surface. And this is just a few little tips about, you know, we prepare for so many other things, but we don't seem to give it much thought when it comes to the river. And even as recent as this year, and I'm going to finish on this, so boring you anymore, but as recent as this summer, our local op shop had to remove all flotation devices from their shelves because people were just rocking up, tourists and people going, what have you got that floats? I'll buy it, I'm going to the river. You know, you're not giving yourself a lot of chance there. And we've rescued many people from the river just because whatever they're floating on doesn't float.
When we talk about drowning and waters and riverways, there's a little bit of a language that we actually speak to. And drowning prevention sort of sits down as a multidiscipline that builds resilience and awareness in a community that identifies risk and vulnerability. Additionally to that, we've got a drowning risk. So what is a drowning risk? And it's essentially the consequences around what happens when you enter a waterway and the potential liability or opportunity that actually may occur. We also talk about hazards and exposure. So a hazard being whether it's environment driven or manufactured, the exposure, so the frequency of things like major rainstorms, weather events, the saturation, so how much water is is coming down a river when we're talking riverways, and things like just the diversity of what the occurrences can be. We also talk about drowning vulnerability. So what are the vulnerabilities within a community? Every community is very different. So you might have an ageing community, you might have a diverse community, you might have a youth community, you might have a community that is reliant on other people or services. So the vulnerability in which we all live is something that we also need to consider. So drowning resilience. Drowning resilience is about adapting processes and the ability as a community to adopt a process to assist your entire community, your fellow neighbour, your friend, your brother, your sister, your auntie, your uncles, your mum, your dads, in preventing any drowning occurrences. When we talk drowning, unfortunately, when it comes to water-based injuries or issues, the problem we face is the collection of data that we've got. So the data, the drowning pyramid, which it's called, is actually broken into 4 categories. Fatal drownings is very, very evident. So you know when somebody's passed away due to drowning episode. So that's data that we can easily collect. Non-fatal drownings that are reported. So they're incidences where a person is nearly drowned. They've been attended to by paramedics or they've sought assistance from lifesavers. They've actually had a medical result, and therefore that data has also been captured. Where we fall into a little bit of a hole is the non-fatal drownings not reported. So that is when there was a scenario spoken about just before where a couple of ladies fell into the water and managed to pull themselves out. They had a bit of a laugh and chuckle and moved on. Well, that's exactly what the non-fatal drowning data that we don't actually get to capture, because that's an event that's occurred. Somebody has potentially been at high risk, coughed, spluttered, even had been sick, or there's been some form of medical issue, but they've been okay and they've sort of dusted themselves off and moved on. And then you've got near misses. So that near misses sort of falls around where a person might be walking close to the water's edge and you have a crumbling rock face, or the dog, you trip over the dog's stick or something and you land face first in the water. And again, you dust yourself off and you move on. They're the information that we don't get. So a lot of our information is really based around any fatalities and non-fatal drownings. So some statistics. So what's occurred in the last 5 years? So what we know is 53%, 55%, there's been an increase in fatal drownings in the last 5 years. That's quite a significant increase. We found quite significantly on the tail end as we're coming out of that dreaded COVID period. A lot of people decided that they wanted to get out and about without having swimming lessons or without having that connectivity with water, and we found a lot of increases occurring. We also found 82% of non-fatal incidences increased. So more and more people are getting into the water, more and more people are getting themselves into trouble. Fatal drowning is pretty much a 50-50 split when it comes to inland waterways and coastal environments. The reason for that being is a lot of drownings tend to feel as though a lot of people sort of think that a lot of drownings happen on the beach, on the coast, in the waves, in the treacherous water. It's actually not the case. A lot of inland waterways, which is not necessarily as what you see in the media, you do see a lot of beach access stuff. So it's very important, especially in this community, that inland waterways is very much taken into consideration. 75% of males is likely to drown. The age bracket in which is at most at risk is 65 plus. So the 65 plus age bracket is due to a lot of farming, especially in the inland waterways, where They might have dams or waterway on their actual properties. Again, feeding the cows, getting them to drink, walking closer to the dam, tripping over, getting stuck in the mud, getting caught, can cause significant trauma. Also to the called population, so the cultural and linguistical diversity, sort of community groups that present, they're twice as likely to be involved in a drowning incident, a fatal drowning incident. Non-fatal drowning, so coastal locations in this instance is actually what's more significant. And the reason for the non-fatal drownings being more coastal is that there's generally more population at a beach. So if somebody does get into trouble, the likelihood is there's somebody there to assist is probably more, it's a numbers game, it's more likely that somebody's going to help to pluck you out. You've also got other lifesavers, lifeguards, patrol beaches. So but that doesn't stop things from happening. Again, 62% of males is more than likely to be occurrence in non-fatal drownings. And also which is interesting here, the demographic most at risk is the 0 to 14-year-olds. Now the reason for that is these things. The amount of parents, carers, sit on their phones, yeah, you're right, you go play, that's fine, and not watch their child, or wherever they're there to the beach with, is atrocious. As I mentioned before, I'm president of a Lifesaving Club. The amount of missing children that we get reported every single weekend is atrocious. And it all accounts to people sitting there on their phones, or reading a book, or not watching their child as the child goes into the water, or goes on the water and just goes for a wander. Now, the good thing is we find 99% of those, but it just goes to show you that it's very important that if you're at the beach, leave your phone in the car, leave it at home, make sure that you're actually watching. A few changes in interactions. So climate change, we've seen a lot of increased rain events. We've got small bursts of hot weather. We've had economic changes, so people, families increase mortgages, increase cost of living. So some of the first things to go are things like swimming lessons. Changes in people, so we've had an increase in populations, cultural diversities, so what are the skill sets around those people that are coming to Australia and enjoying what we know and love. And we've also got changes in policies, so things like mandating fences and barricades around swimming pools. So there's some big changes in that space. So who's responsible to prevent drowning? And this is a perfect example of it takes a community to raise a child or a person. So everybody is essentially responsible when it comes to drowning. So community first and foremost, because the community knows their environment better than anybody. They know what the waterways are like, and they know where the dangers and the risks lie. Industry, so Lifesaving Victoria is a big part of industry. The data collection that we hold is extremely significant, and we use that data to go and work with local councils, state governments to try and build better, robust approaches to water safety. And of course, government. So without a lot of these strategies, the government who provide grant funding and a lot of other varying opportunities play a huge part as well. So the state government, coordinated through Emergency Management Victoria, created the Victorian Water Safety Strategy and the Water Safety Action Plan. So these are documents that we, as Lifesaving Victoria and the industry experts, we guide, advise. So this is what we're working towards, is a better, safe water management environment. So the Victorian Water Safety Strategy is broken into three contexts. So community, again, is a key focus of what the strategy is about. It's about working with community and building resilience, building opportunity. The local context also includes things like local government, local community leaders, and of course our third is agencies and local government, so supporting emergency services, Lifesaving Victoria, and state federal governments. All play a key role. Well, our first factor one is around the disregard of the hazard. So things like on-site, and so education. So education plays a big role in communities and what the waterways are doing. So that includes things like signage, it includes life-saving, it includes swimming lessons, it includes even just the mums and dads standing by the side of the river and guiding there and providing guidance to a child or another person. It doesn't necessarily have to be a child, because the amount of adults that aren't great swimmers is not too far off the amount of children either. Factor 2 is around unrestricted use. So that's why pool fencing became mandatory in Victoria. You've also got signage and active management and regulations around what you can do around swimming pools or waterways. Factor 3 includes supervision. So areas of mass gathering or areas where water is being managed without having lifeguarding services, trained observers, and of course parent supervisors. Put the phones down, put the books down. And of course our last factor 4 is around being able to cope. So what happens if something goes wrong? Knowing your skills and ability to be able to support what that might look like. And that could be the use of flotation devices. It could be public rescue equipment, community aids, it could be 000s. How do you actually, if something does go wrong, how are you going to manage it? From here, what are our next steps? So how does the community become part of the solution? What strengths do you have as a valued member of the community to support what that looks like? And in saying that as well, looking at the strengths is one thing, but what about the challenges? So being able to evaluate your own ability to swim, your own ability to understand what a waterway does. So that then provides you what restrictions you may or may not have. And can you educate yourself? Can you improve your ability and reduce what those restrictions look like? What does success look like? So within a community, what does success look like for safe waterways? So our call to action, keep the conversations going. That's the best thing anybody can do within a community. Continue to talk about what the problem might be. That engages and it provides additional learning. Understanding the diversity of risk. So it's a waterway is not just a danger because someone's going to drown because they can't swim. As we've learned tonight through multiple agencies here, the diversity of risk can be logs, trees, rocks, tripping, falling. It could be a number of different reasons. Weather conditions, rainfalls. And there's also industry experts out there to assist. So Lifesaving Victoria has a research team. Lifesaving Victoria has got education teams, public education teams, community education teams. We've got consultants, we've got a number of outreaches that we can actually support in communities when it comes to waterways.
I spoke to Northern Water about that, and yeah, it's a huge thing to pull them out of a river. Because I asked the same question: can't we just we've got machinery that can just chop them up and pull them out and everything like that? And they said with river banks and so forth, and they're waterlogged, and there's just so much being able to pull them out. It is a huge problem. But they do break down, and they actually do create an ecosystem under the water too.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so there's a whole lot of challenges, and it's like snakes in Warrandyte. They're dangerous, possibly. So we just learn to adapt and be around them and move around them and make our lifestyle fit that, so we're not removing the snakes from the area, so to speak, as an analogy.
So from part of the research I've done was a bit of an audit of where the river is posted online and how that's kind of displayed. And I will say that the amount of media and different blogs that are posting the river as this wonderful, very idyllic place to swim with no kind of linked safety messaging has increased. So we have recently, in conjunction with a lot of people in this room, sent out a bit of a letter to all of those websites to kind of encourage them to at the same time as talking about this idyllic place to swim, also talk about some of the risks and some things that you should keep in mind if you're coming down there. So from my understanding, over COVID and things like having like 5K or 10K limits, there were people who hadn't come to the river before that started coming down and then made a habit out of that. But I think that's one of the things at play, and maybe we can have a talk about any of that.
But are you saying there's no significant increase in risk in the condition of the river? It's just all the factors of ability to swim and...
I guess the river, from my understanding, changes probably daily, hourly, depending really what's happening upriver. So, or upstream, should I say. So anything coming back down can change the focus of any point of the river at any point in time. So an area today might be perfectly fine. It might be dangerous, but tomorrow it's okay, or the good space is actually not okay tomorrow. So it's just something that is just needs to be evaluated any time you go to a waterway. So you might go and stand in, walk around, make sure that there's nothing underneath the water, and then go and play, that's fine. But 24 hours later, there might be something there. So if you were revisiting that same space 24 hours later, I'd still be doing the exact same thing just to make sure that everything's still okay.
As we can appreciate, we have come out of a La Nina weather and climate cycle over the last few years. So in particular, the last 4 years, we've seen numerous floods in the Yarra River. Each time the river floods, it changes, okay? So we have the hydrology of the river and all the things we've talked about already this evening with trees and submerged hazards, erosion to banks, just to name a few examples. When the river floods, the river changes. And because we've had so many floods over the last few years, that means there has been changes to the river, okay? But we can't see necessarily what's under the water, as we've talked about. So we can't see all those hazards, we can't appreciate those risks that are there, but we do know that each time a river floods, it does change. So I think what we can probably conclude from that is there has been some significant changes to the Yarra, right up all the way up to Warburton and through this area as well. We've had common floods all the way to the city. So I think as a community and as agencies, we're certainly aware of the fact that we do need to be mindful when we're actually being around the river, when we're recreating, when we're using the river. We support Victoria Police with flood rescues. So we have representation from our Nillumbik and Manningham units. So typically we would support police with a response if someone's in trouble in the water. Now we have inflatable rescue boats based at the Manningham unit. We also have a land-based swiftwater rescue team based out of the Nillumbik unit. So we have members that are trained to provide support to people that are in trouble. They're called our land-based swiftwater rescue members. They do a couple of days of training, and they also have to wear a PFD and a helmet, and they have specific equipment just to be within a few metres of the bank. So these members, they don't enter the water, but if they're within 3 metres of the riverbank, they're required to wear that safety equipment because we understand there are risks in the river, and if you do go in, especially in what we call swift water, where that's faster than walking pace, things can happen and people can get into trouble. So as a service, we take these things seriously. So I guess that's what we do as a service to protect our own members. And I'd encourage everyone just to think about that. Yes, I think it's fair to say the river has changed. I don't think we can be specific about the risk itself, but we do know that lots of things that are harmful do enter the waterways. And I think a lot of those have been touched on already tonight. So I guess, I'd encourage you all just to think about that when you do enter the river. Of course, people want to enjoy the space, and I'm a user of the river myself. I kayak down the river. I've been doing that for about 14 years. I'm certainly not a professional kayaker,
but I wear a helmet and a PFD every single time. I always go in there with my friends and my mates, and we look out for each other.
Just like surf lifesavers can go into surf that we wouldn't go into, it has characteristics. It's called reading the water. So a surf lifesaver can read the water, see where the ribs are, where the currents, undertows, etc., and know to keep away from that. That's why the general population who aren't water aware get stuck all the time. The same thing with the river. It's about experience. Every wave, every ripple, every eddy, it tells you what's underneath the water. But that usually comes from experience. It's nothing that you can just learn on day one. It's about being on the water all the time, knowing that same rapid that you've been through before and recognising that that's changed for some reason. And usually when you read the water, you should be looking before you enter the rapid or the swift water and gauge what's there before you go down and always look for an exit strategy.
There's plenty of companies that run kayaking.
Absolutely. You've got Canoe Victoria. We've got a local fella here who does kayak tours or canoe tours regularly with school groups. All those people have been on the river for a long time, and they're basic skills courses you can do as well. But if you go down with White Horse Canoe Club, they're really keen to have extra members, and they're happy to help anyone. It doesn't cost a thing. They have basic skill days as well, so there's plenty of opportunities for them to kayak safely and read the water as well. Look, I guess there's idiot factors all across the board, you know, whether it's driving cars, riding a motorbike without a helmet, you know, we tend just to stay away from that sort of stuff. Now, don't we, because it's going to cause a fight, you don't want to get involved. I guess it's the same sort of thing here. You can educate people to an extent, you know, you can have signs, you can have policies, you can have everything else, but you're still going to have that knucklehead factor, like the young males who think they're bulletproof and it's okay, it's a nice day, it doesn't look like the river's doing anything too bad, have a drink, doesn't matter, I'm fine. You know, I don't know how far do you educate people. It's, you know what, it needs to be common sense, and I think that's the problem. It's not all that common anymore, it seems to be. And there's got to be some responsibility for your actions in a way as well. So you can't protect everyone. You know, you can't have the cotton wool factor for everything. It's a hard thing to navigate. I don't know what the answer is to that.
We as a community need to role model the practices that we want other people that are coming to the river. I mean, you spoke about wearing a helmet, all those attributes. If they see people are doing the right thing by the river, not all the time, common sense doesn't always apply, but our responsibility in community is to demonstrate those good practices and hope that others follow suit. So we're doing that really well. We just need to continue that as well.
Just to respond back to your question previously, yeah, if it's a one-on-one scenario and somebody is acting quite silly in the water, you might approach it somewhat differently. But if everybody in that river is saying, "Hey, don't do that," and every person, they will stop.
Is there a chance to develop some simple messaging? Because, like, I've had a look at the stories about the report, and it talks about simplified community messaging. Is there any for specifically about, you know, river safety and interacting with water, you know, stuff that people can, you know, use to
yeah, and that's in
people are doing stuff they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, essentially going back to one of my slides earlier, being where it's about community, it's about industry experts and government. It's about all of us coming together to be able to build on that, and that includes messaging. It includes having a common theme. And I think most of you might have even seen the ads on TV with the flotation. They're like people in the water. And it's about looking after your mates in the water. So messaging is going to be a key part of what success looks like.
Done a bit of a Google about this, and there are so the Unsinkable Guy campaign is really big at the moment, and they do beach and they also do river, but the Department of Justice and Community Safety also has a couple of really recent campaigns, like the past couple of years, that are about kind of like alcohol use, river, looking after your friends, and they, I thought, were really like filmed in environments that look like this, and I would love to see those put out there more. So that's definitely something that we should explore, how we can get further out there so that more of the community and more of the people who visit the river from other places can see them.
So I might just, in response to that, I guess, from a from a flood point of view, the Bureau of Meteorology, they issue flood warnings in relation to what we call riverine flood risks. So, and this is one of those examples. So the Yarra River is a catchment that has a warning system attached to it, and so there's different levels within that flood warning. So we have minor, moderate, and major flood levels. As you can appreciate, it's becoming more and more common to see minor floods in these river systems. Now, as a part of our responsibility when it comes to floods within Victoria, we issue those warnings via the Vic Emergency app and the Vic Emergency website, and we provide a community notification around the flood levels. So in particular, we'll provide additional information, usually where we have it, about the conditions of the river, if that's available at the time, and we advise the community about the impacts in the area potentially and then the actions to take. So, of course, as the river levels rise, so too do the risks and the hazards. So for a minor flood, usually what we see is those bike paths and the areas that are adjacent to the waterway becoming inundated. The river levels come up, but that can happen, as I said, relatively quickly, and it could be after a rain event. So we still would see people that potentially use the river recently or quite, a short time frame after that flood or even during the flood. I know that was mentioned about, obviously, professionals might utilise that river, but generally speaking, so our advice to community is, and I'm sure you've heard this before, not to drive through floodwaters, to play, to ride, to walk, and of course to swim, okay? But that also includes things as a general advice not to engage in those water activities in floodwaters. And it's not just about the level of the water, as we've heard tonight, it's about all the hazards that are in that water. Now, I could stand here for the next 5 minutes rattling them all off for you, but it's not just about the physical obstructions and the strainers and the currents, but we also know that in floods we tend to see things like raw sewage, we tend to see chemicals, poisonous substances, and all those other objects that are submersed, whether they be fencing, whether they be metal objects, a whole range of hazards that are underneath that water. So the last thing we want is to have people in that environment putting themselves at risk. So yeah, we would obviously encourage everyone not to be in that environment. And of course, the faster it gets, the higher the risk is going to be. We heard that example, which was a really good example about, the pressure of the water, that tonnage of water going through that 1 square metre. So the faster it is, the more pressure there is in the water there as well. So I think, as a rule of thumb, we want obviously people to enjoy the waterways, but there are times of the year where we don't want people in that environment.